Howdy AdWords fans, and welcome back. In this exciting lecture, we're going to start talking about bid strategies in greater detail. We just touched the surface on it in the previous lecture, but let's go take a look at each individual bidding strategy and understand what the objectives of that strategy are, how those strategies actually work, and in what scenarios those strategies might be useful to you as an advertiser. So once again, as you click down this menu, we see a whole bunch of these different strategies. Most of them are automated bidding strategies. One of them is actually a semi-autonomous bidding strategy, and then you have manual CPC, cost per click bidding. So let me pull up the slides and we'll go through the first 3 automated strategies in this lecture, and we'll go through the rest of the strategies in the following lecture, just to break it up a little bit. Over the last year or so, a lot has changed with bidding strategies. It used to be much simpler. You had manual CPC bidding, conversion optimizer, and essentially that was it. We now have a whole spectrum of different bidding strategies, and there's a lot of confusion over what are these things, what do they do for me, and how should I use them to my advantage. So let's just take a rundown of the bidding strategies list. We have the automated bidding strategies. The first one is targeting a search page location. The second strategy is target CPA. CPA stands for cost per acquisition. Acquisition is another word which is synonymous with conversion, so it could be considered cost per conversion. Obviously, we don't use the acronym CPC because that would be confusing with cost per click. Target ROAS, which stands for return on ad spend, not to be confused with ROI, which is return on investment. They're two very separate things, and we're going to get into that in much greater detail later in the course. Target outranking share. Maximizing clicks, that's, if you remember, that's the default strategy AdWords pre-selects for us. We have our manual bidding strategy, which is manual CPC, and we have our semi-autonomous bidding strategy, which is manual CPC with enhanced CPC enabled. This is also considered eCPC, enhanced cost per click bidding. Let's go take a look at all of these in greater detail. So the first thing we're going to look at is targeting search page location. So what's the objective of targeting search page location? The idea here is to really increase brand awareness by having our impressions show higher on the SERP. SERP stands for search engine results page. That's what happens when you type something into Google and you hit enter, you land on the SERP. Increasing your CTR, which is your click-through rate, is also an objective for this bidding strategy. But the idea is you want the keywords that you're applying the strategy to, or the campaign or the ad group that you're applying this strategy to make sure that these ads are showing up either on the first page or at the top of the page. You're going to be able to choose one of the two when you're setting up this target search page location bid strategy. So that's the overall objective. It's really not about cost per click. It's not really about how much money you make from your ads. You want that awareness. Some people in the industry would refer to that as brand lift. How does it work? Google's going to take control of your keyword level bids, the bid for each keyword. You're not going to set a keyword level bid. And they're going to try to win as many top of page or first page auctions for your predetermined daily budget. Remember, this is always capped. All these automated bid strategies will not spend more throughout the day than what you tell Google you're willing to spend throughout the day. That always remains the same. That's a constant throughout every single type of bidding strategy. You always set a daily budget for the campaign. And remember, and we're going to go through this again, daily budgets are set at the campaign level. Now, you could apply this target search page location bid strategy to a specific ad group within a campaign, and it would apply to all those keywords inside that ad group, or using portfolio bid strategies, and we're going to talk about portfolio bid strategies in more detail. You could create this strategy just for a select number of keywords inside any given ad group. So it's pretty interesting and pretty flexible stuff. But the basic idea is you're handing over the max CPC bid range to Google. You could set a max bid limit, which is another important thing to keep in mind. And the idea is to not really worry about the cost of that click, not really worry about the cost per conversion that click results in. But what you want to do is you want to increase brand awareness, you want to increase your click-through rate, you want to make sure you're at the top of the page or at least on the first page. And what's a potential scenario that this might be helpful in? So say your company is running a brand awareness campaign and your boss or you're interested in people knowing about your business over clicks and conversions. So having your ads always showing up at the top of the page, or at least on the first page, even if they don't get clicked, will help you increase brand awareness. People will be able to see your display URL. They'll be able to know what your company is. That will help increase awareness. Using this strategy, you might be using broader keywords, which might have cheaper cost per click because they might have less commercial intent associated with those search terms. So you might have a lot of broad keywords, but you always want to be visible to the user either on the first page or the top of the page. That might be a scenario where target search page location might come into play. Before going to the next slide, I also want to point out that you're going to see a lot of overlap. You're going to kind of be hearing these different types of bid strategies, and you're going to say, hey, I could really go with one or two of these or two or three of these, which is fine, and that's to be expected. The beauty of testing and collecting data is going to allow you to figure out which bid strategy ultimately is going to be the most profitable for you, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. There are different means of getting there. You might now want to get brand awareness and at one point get more conversions, or it might at one point get cheaper clicks, but it all comes down to growing your business. And by testing these different bid strategies over time, you're going to find the data is going to reveal which strategy is going to make the most sense for you in particular. So the next bidding strategy we're going to talk about is target ROAS, targeting a specific return on ad spend. If you're confused with what ROAS is, return on ad spend, we're going to just kind of gloss over it now, touch upon it briefly, but we're going to get into it in much more detail with some whiteboard videos and lots of numbers and a lot more clarity later on. The objective of targeting a return on ad spend is if you're tracking multiple conversion actions. You could set up as many conversion actions as you want. And again, we're going to talk about setting up conversion actions and tracking conversions later in the course. But for example, an e-commerce sale, somebody checking out and buying an item online, that might be one conversion action. Somebody calling you from an ad might be a conversion action. A form submission is another typical conversion action. And each conversion action will likely have a different value to your company. A phone call is usually not worth the same as a form submission, and a form submission is not always worth the same as somebody buying a product on your website. Targeting a return on ad spend is going to aim to bid based on how much money you want to have returned to you after investing that money in ads. So you're not targeting a cost per conversion. You're not saying, I want to get these form submissions for $100, but rather you're saying this form submission is worth X, and I want to have a 300% or 200% times return on that value of the conversion. The calculation for return on ad spend is your total conversion value, which is synonymous with your revenue, divided by your cost. Not all the costs, but the cost of ads itself. Hence the return on ad spend, and not the return on investment, which would take into account your cost of goods, your rent, your staff, your overhead, so on and so forth. So this is just purely a PPC formula, return on ad spend. And the idea is you're going to tell Google, let's take a look at how it works. You're going to tell Google how much these conversions are worth to you. And Google's going to predict which clicks are likely to convert and in what type of conversion will they convert into. And you're going to tell Google how much those conversions are worth. You tell that to Google when you set up conversion tracking. It's a manually entered number. This conversion, you say, I'm setting up a form submission, this is worth $20. If it's e-commerce, it might be a dynamic transaction value, or you might have a set value. But you must have conversion values configured. When you set up conversion tracking, it's not required to enter in a conversion value. But if you want to use an automated target ROAS bidding strategy for keywords, ad groups, or campaigns, you actually do have to have those conversion values inputted. Otherwise, there's nothing for Google to go by, of course. It's very simple math. A couple more interesting things to know. Campaigns that are using target ROAS, they need to have at least 15 conversions in the last 30 days, and conversion values need to be consistent within a range for a few days. And what I mean by that is that if you're tracking form submissions, you need to be getting those form submissions for a pretty steady cost per form submission over the past few days. So that way Google's algorithms could now more accurately predict how much this conversion is going to cost if we bid X on this keyword. So it is pretty tricky stuff, but this is the general gist of what target ROAS bidding is and how it works. Now, what might be a scenario where target ROAS bidding makes sense for you? So say your company sells insurance, any type of insurance, you could be creative. And those insurance policies are sold through a sales form. But you also have a free ebook available for download on your site. Now we're going to get much more detailed into these calculations, and I know this might sound confusing to some of you. Some of you obviously get this stuff right away, but we're going to go into it in more detail in future lectures when we talk about ROAS bidding. Let's say you know that your conversion rate for your sales form is 10%, which means 1 out of 10 sales forms that you receive turn into a paying client, turn into an insurance policy sold. Your conversion rate from your ebook is much, much lower. People are not looking to actually buy the policy, they're looking to read your ebook. So let's say it's 0.05%, half of a percent. You also know that your average client value is worth $850. Based on this average client value, you're going to be able to tell Google what an ebook is worth to you and what a sales form is worth to you. And we're not going to get into the formulas right now. And based on what Google knows about the costs of your clicks and your AdWords conversion rates, remember your AdWords conversion rate is different than the rate at which you convert clients from your materials, from your sales form, or from your ebook. Your AdWords conversion rate is the rate at which clicks on an ad turn into one of these conversion actions. So remember that distinction, it's very important. Based on what Google knows about your clicks and your AdWords conversion rates for each of these different conversions, they're going to try to hit your target ROAS. Now, the big question mark looming over this entire slide is how do you know what ROAS you need? What return do you need to be? Really good idea for. So let's just say you're a plumber and you have one conversion action on your website. It's a form submission, or it's the one conversion action that you're tracking in AdWords. You know from your own data, similar to the case we had in the previous slide with target ROAS, you know from your data that you're going to close 1 in 5 forms into an actual client of yours, right? So that would be a 20% form conversion rate. 1 in 5 is going to be a 20% conversion rate. You also know that your average job, you have your own data, you know your business, your average job is worth $275 in profit. That's your business. So it's a very simple calculation to figure out your break-even point. Using those two numbers, a 20% form conversion rate and the fact that they're worth $275, in order for you to make money, you need to get form submissions for less than $82.50. You just do $275, which is the profit, multiplied by 20%, which is your conversion rate. That gets you to 82.50. If you get forms for 82.50, you're going to be breaking even. If you get forms for $82.65, you're going to be losing 15 cents on every job. So you need to be getting form submissions for less than $82.50 in order to make money. What that number is up to you. You might be okay with breaking even to win more clients. You might say, hey, I need to make X amount of dollars per job, so I need to get my form submissions for $30 each, right? So that means my cost per client is going to be $150. And I'm going to make $125 on the deal. So it's all kind of up to you and your business metrics and your business numbers, but that might be a typical scenario where you could come up with a target CPA and test target CPA bidding. And I would definitely recommend trying target CPA bidding once you have your account rolling, once conversion tracking is set up and your SURE is tracking profitably. It could yield some really cool results. We've seen it happen many times. In the next lecture, we're going to talk about target outranking share. I know this is probably like an overload of information, but just you could review it, let it sink in. It's not a big deal. You don't need to remember each one of these off the top of your head. You don't have to memorize these different bidding strategies. You're only going to end up using a couple of them. You're going to start off using manual CPC bidding anyway. If you have an account that you're learning about that has a lot of historic data, you're going to start off with just kind of testing one of these two. You might test target CPA, you might test target